今年6月，全球平均海面温度达到新高，南极海冰面积则创历史新低。
One of the bad news concerning climate change is that the melting of glaciers.
包括我国在内，全球多地遭遇高温极端天气袭击，世界高温纪录也连续被刷新。
El Niño will lead to these high global temperatures, and it's practically sure that during the coming 5 years we will break the all-time temperature record globally.
全球极端天气频发，呼吁世界要加强合作。
And United Nations has a goal that in 5 years, everybody on the planet should have access to proper early warning services, and this would help us to live with the consequences of climate change. And
新闻1+1今晚，白岩松专访世界气象组织秘书长彼得里·塔拉斯。
您好，观众朋友，欢迎收看新闻1+1。这个夏天呢，人们谈论最多的就是热，太热了。那么，仅仅是中国面临着这样高温的考验吗？世界的情况怎么样？我们会持续的热下去吗？更加重要的是，我们该做一些什么？会发生怎样的改变？今天我们专访世界气象组织秘书长。秘书长先生，非常高兴您接受我们的采访，谢谢您。我知道您在芬兰，但是很羡慕，应该很凉爽。但是否感觉芬兰也比过去更热了？
Yeah, so the temperatures worldwide they are increasing because we have been using especially fossil fuels during the past century so much, and that's why we have started seeing the impacts of climate change, and the impacts of climate change are more and more visible year by year.
您知道，在6月份的时候，北京曾经有连续3天气温超过40度，这在过去从来没有过。而在7月份的时候，又不断的出现这种40度以上的这种高温，这是偶然的吗？从全球的角度来看是什么样的
We have started seeing increase of the amount of heat waves worldwide, and last summer you were breaking all-time high in China, and that has also happened. This summer in in northwestern part of your country, and at the moment we are having very severe heat wave taking place in Central and Southern Europe, and also in parts of North America.
世界气象组织10号发布报告称，7月7号是有记录以来全球最热的一天。当天全球平均气温为17.24摄氏度，比此前的记录高出0.3摄氏度。
The heat feels like when you preheat the oven and you open it up to stick the food in, that heat coming from the oven is like.
درجة الحرارة أول مرة نشتغل فيها زي هيك، وقاعدين نشتغل إحنا والجو شوفن، حر كثير أول مرة تمر علينا موجة زي هيك.
未来一段时间，意大利萨丁岛和西西里岛的气温可能会超过欧洲大陆有记录以来的历史最高值48.8摄氏度。
连日来，美国西部和南部多地遭受着高温的持续炙烤。
京津冀地区是高温持续，局部地区的气温达到了40摄氏度以上，3地都是发布了高温红色预警信号。
世界气象组织10号发布的数据显示，5月和6月的全球海面温度分别打破此前历史记录。
有媒体报道呢，就在有的地方在7月6号，有的在7月7号这一天创下人类最高温的记录，这是事实吗？最重要的是，这个记录会不会不断的被打破
Yes, we were just a couple of weeks ago. We were breaking all-time highs in daily global temperatures, and at the moment. Both Pacific Ocean temperatures are higher than normally due to El Niño event, and then also in the Atlantic we have seen record-breaking surface temperatures of ocean, and it's very likely that this year may even be the warmest year on record. The last 3 years have been so-called La Niña years. Which has been cooling the Pacific temperatures, and that's why we haven't been breaking the all-time high. But it's practically likely that during the coming years we will reach the highest temperature ever as annual temperatures, and it may even happen already this year.
从热浪的角度来看，从全世界哪一个大洲的情况更让您担忧？
Actually, if you look at the global map, we can say that the Eurasian continent, both Asia and Europe, have been facing higher temperature increases than the global average. And for example, here in Europe, we have seen double the global warming rate. So far, we have seen about 1.15 degrees warming taking place globally, and in Europe it has been 2.3 degrees so far. And the same seems to be happening also in the Asian part of this Eurasian continent. So also in China and Japan, for example, we have been breaking all-time highs because of this impact of climate change.
持续的这种热浪和高温，如果从疫情相比较的话，您的看法是什么？
So this climate change is a long-term challenge. Luckily, this pandemic was a problem for a couple of years, and actually during the COVID, it was very much the same people who were dying that are dying because of the high temperatures. It was very much old people and people who were having health problems in general. But unfortunately, climate change doesn't go away. This negative trend in weather patterns, including heat waves, will continue until 2060s, and there's no return back to the climate of last century, and we will see more often this kind of cases during the coming decades. And if we are successful in climate mitigation, especially reduction of our consumption of fossil fuels, we could seize this negative trend in 2060s, and thereafter we could have the more or less stable situation. But there's no return back to the temperatures that we used to have 100 years ago.
您曾经说过，气候是没有国界的。那么，从整个人类的角度去看，我们这个地球，南极和北极受这种气候变暖，它在受到什么样的影响？是否很危险？
Yes, actually, one of the bad news concerning climate change is that the melting of glaciers, Himalayan glaciers, Alpine glaciers, Andean, Rocky Mountains glaciers, and especially the big glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica are going to melt even for the coming thousands of years, meaning that we will have less water in main rivers. For example, in Asia, many big rivers have their origins from Himalayan glaciers, and that glacier will mostly disappear during the coming 200 years. And this continuation of melting of Greenland and Antarctic glaciers are going to lead to continuous increase of sea level. The conservative estimate is 0.5 meter to 1 meter per century, but some studies have shown that there's even a risk to see 10 meters sea level rise by 2300 if the Antarctic glacier melting takes place speedier than before.
您知道，就是在这个之前呢，人类达成共识，希望在未来几年将整个地球这个温度上升的幅度呢增值控制在1.5度这样一个范围之内。但是面对这种持续的热浪，这样的一个目标是否显得太过于乐观而很难实现？
With 1.5 degrees, we would see more heat waves than we have seen so far, and with 2 degrees, it would be even more. And at the moment, we are heading towards 2.5 to 3 degrees warming, which would be mean massive amount of heat waves, more often flooding problems, more often drought problems, more intense tropical storms, typhoons, hurricanes, and cyclones. And it's very important that we limit the warming as slow as possible, and it's still possible to reach 1.5 degrees.
在过去的这段日子里，身边的人到处都在谈论热，但这只是人们越发感觉不舒服。可是从总体来看，这种热浪已经使我们的生活发生了怎样的改变？
So this frequency of heat waves is going to increase for the coming 30 years. And at the same time, we will see more often flooding problems, which have been hitting also China. We have also seen drought problems, like what happened last summer in China, in Europe, and also in western parts of North America, and these events are becoming more frequent because of climate change, and they also they will have a big negative impact on economies.
接下来还是面对这种热，人们会有一些问号，比如说其中一个问号是：气温不断的上升，一定是人类活动所导致的吗？
That's very clearly shown by science community. We haven't had these normal geological periods, and now we are talking about so-called Anthropocene, where the impact of human emissions, especially consumption of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, have changed our global climate. And this is the first time in the planetary history that we have seen such a big impact of human emissions on climate. In the long run, we have had this natural variability, which is caused by the geometry between sun and earth, and these kind of variations are now shadowed by this impact of mankind.
您肯定听到过这样的一种说法，说大自然其实比我们想象的还要强大，它的冷热有它自身的规律，可能过于强调人为的因素是另外的一种生意。那您一般怎么回应这种说法？
So we have had these glaciation variations, and they will continue, but because of this large amount of carbon dioxide, partly also methane that we have emitted to the atmosphere, we have changed this natural cycle, and for the coming thousands of years, this human impact will dominate the climatic conditions on our planet. But thereafter, we may go back to this kind of normal variation where this sun-earth geometry drives the variability. We will have ice ages again, but for the coming thousands of years, this human impact is going to be the dominant one.
世界气象组织4号说，热带太平洋地区近年来首次形成厄尔尼诺条件，预计今后全球大部分地区气温将进一步升高。
When you're doing an El Niño year, you get higher temperatures in the atmosphere as well because heat is moving from the oceans to the atmosphere. But as you correctly pointed out, we're actually only just at the beginning of that process. So El Niño hasn't had as much of an effect as it's going to later in the year.
在全球变暖背景下，叠加中等以上强度的厄尔尼诺事件，可能导致高温等极端天气频次更多、范围更广、强度更强。
17号，受极端高温天气影响，距离雅典27公里的一个村庄附近发生山火。
近日，印度、日本、美国等多国遭遇暴雨，引发洪水、山体滑坡等灾害。
南美国家乌拉圭正遭受70年来最严重的干旱。
提到气候变暖，不能不提到厄尔尼诺现象。那么有媒体报道，也有信息显示，厄尔尼诺正在一个新的形成过程中，甚至在明年可能达到至少中等强度以上。你们所了解的情况怎么样？最重要的是，它给我们带来什么影响？我们该如何面对它
？Yes, we have this natural variability of Pacific ocean temperatures. We have this cold phase, which is so-called La Niña, which we have had for the past 3 years, and now we have moved to El Niño phase, which means that the Pacific temperatures are higher than normally, and the combined impact of climate change and El Niño will lead to these high global temperatures, and it's practically sure that during the coming 5 years we will break the all-time temperature record globally, and there's, as I already said, 66% probability that we would hit the low limit of Paris Agreement 1.5 at least on temporary basis.
您曾经说过，这个大自然的热浪是大自然给我们发出的又一次预警。您的这句话是说给谁听的？特别希望听到怎样的反馈？现在有好的反馈了吗？
So the key issue for the welfare of mankind and biosphere and for the coming generations and also for the global economy is that we have to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels. That means coal in energy production, oil in transportation, and natural gas in industries and various other means. And then we could also reduce the methane emissions by having less cattle and and also rice paddies are causing methane emissions. But the key issue is that we have to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels, which is the main reason for these heat waves, flooding events, droughts, and more intense tropical storms, and also melting of glaciers worldwide. And we are lucky that we have better means to reduce the emissions. Also, China has helped in that sense. China is a leading producer of solar energy systems, wind energy systems, and now China is also a very strong producer of electric vehicles, and all those means help us in reduction of the consumption of fossil fuels, and also in energy production. Besides wind and solar energy, we have to build more nuclear energy to comfort the energy need and battle this climate change. At the same time, we can also battle the air quality problem, which is faced also in many parts of China. We could improve the air quality by reducing the consumption of fossil fuels, and that's the key to success. And luckily, the world has started acting, but so far the speed hasn't been high enough to keep us in this Paris 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees limits.
一个带点玩笑色彩的话是，是否是温度继续上升，人们可能就会更加警觉了。
Yeah, so when our meteorological community started talking about climate change already 40 years ago, there was no reaction from the audience. But now we see the impacts of climate change worldwide. We see more often these heat waves. We see speeding up of the melting of glaciers, speeding up of sea level rise, and more often flooding events, and also we have started seeing tropical storms hitting areas which were not exposed in the past. For example, southeastern part of Africa has started seeing more often tropical storms and with lots of damage. So the combined impact of scientific information and the fact that we have started seeing the impacts with our own eyes has been a wake-up call.
我们知道，今年呢，世界气象组织批准了2个战略的倡议，其中一个是全民的预警体系。那我们该怎么理解"全民"这2个字？它会起到什么样的一种作用？怎么去建立？
So besides reducing the emissions, we have to adapt to climate change, because the impacts of climate change they are seen more often, and we have to mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. And one very powerful way to do so is to invest in early warning systems, so that we can better predict these high impact events on daily basis, weekly basis, monthly and seasonal basis, and also this El Niño La Niña variability half year ahead. And at the moment, only half of our 193 members have such systems in place, and we have to improve the situation in Africa, in Pacific, Caribbean islands, and some parts of Asia, and some parts of Latin America. And the know-how that you are having in China is very much needed for that, and China is already helping many countries in improvement of the early warning systems. And United Nations has a goal that in 5 years, everybody on the planet should have access to proper early warning services, and this would help us to live with the consequences of climate change, and we could avoid both human losses, and we could also avoid economic losses related to impacts of climate change.
前些日子呢，美国气候特使特里呢在北京访问，在热浪的背景下，您怎么看待中美这2个国家在气候方面的合作？
So China and USA are the biggest emitters of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and it's very important that those countries join forces and share a common vision that we have to enhance our ambition level of climate mitigation, reduction of use of fossil fuels, and hopefully there would be also technology transfers both ways. China has good technology for this purpose, but also United States and also European Union countries have technological means to speed up our climate action, and it's great that China and USA are able to discuss this issue and join forces, and of course that would be needed in many other fields, and joining forces in climate action is very much welcome, and I've been very happy to see that taking place.
在面对全球气候呈现出一种糟糕的局面的这种情况下，人类怎么做才能有一个更好的结果？最重要的是，您想象的那个更好的结果应该是什么样的？
So the key issue is to change our energy systems from fossil fuel-based, for example, coal-fired energy production to renewable energies, solar, wind, hydropower, and also build more nuclear energy, and also find means to save energy. Those are needed in energy sector, and in transport sector. It's very important that we move more to electric vehicles instead of oil-fired vehicles, and in the future we may also have new fuels like hydrogen in place for transportation means, and we are also cooling and heating our houses, and heat pump technologies allow ways to save energy and also save money for consumers. And also in our everyday diet we could consume less meat because cattle is also causing methane emissions, and luckily we have all the technological and economical means to be successful in climate mitigation, but there's a need for more political will to start speeding up our action, and there's still a chance to keep the warming at 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees target, which would be best for the welfare of us human beings, welfare of biosphere, and also welfare of global economy.
刚才说过，您说过的那句话，在气候面前，人类是没有国界的。但是现实中的确有国界，而且往往分成发达国家呀，包括贫穷国家等等。那么在改变气候的责任方面，您觉得发达国家该做一些什么？又如何去帮助很多贫穷的国家？
So as part of Paris Agreement, there's an agreement that there would be financing from richest countries to poorest countries to help their climate action, and that's partly taking place. We haven't been able to reach this 100 billion a year that is needed, but what is important is that all of the countries worldwide should act now. So we cannot wait. If we wait, then we would see these higher numbers of warming with much more negative impacts of climate change. And I have been happy to see that also in poor countries, for example, in Africa, there's movement going on, and many countries have reduced their consumption of fossil fuels, and when they have gone to renewable energy, and they have also enhanced their forest growth, and they have planted trees to bind more carbon from the atmosphere. But globally, we have to speed up and the action and raise the ambition level to keep us at the safe levels of warming.
再隔几个月呢，在这种热浪的背景下呢，联合国的气候大会就要召开了。您是否对此会有更多的期待
？There we expect to see new pledges from the countries so that we would raise the ambition level of climate mitigation, but also to ensure that we are also paying attention to climate adaptation and early warning service systems.
好，非常感谢秘书长先生在这个炎热的夏季接受我们的采访，谢谢。其实说到春夏秋冬，我们会觉得每一个季节都有它最美好的一面。希望通过大家共同的努力，不会让夏天成为将来我们最讨厌的季节。谢谢您。
Thanks for the opportunity to address you, and I would like to wish you all the best.
好，谢谢，再见。